Greetings all, this is Bill Burke, and I'm very excited to bring you this latest episode of Blue Sky. But before I do that, I wanted to share this short announcement from one of our newest partners, the great podcast from Pushkin Industries, A Slight Change of Plans.
Hey there, I'm Dr. Maya Shankar, and I'm a scientist who studies human behavior. Many of us have experienced a moment in our lives that changes everything, that instantly divides our life into a before and an after. On my podcast, A Slight Change of Plans, I talk to people about navigating these moments. Their stories are full of candor and hard-won wisdom. And you'll hear from scientists who teach us how we can be more resilient in the face of change. Listen on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Burke, and in every Blue Sky episode, we'll be speaking to leaders, researchers, and thinkers whose stories and insights will remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. Everybody loves a good comeback story. Whether they be in books, movies, or on TV, we're inspired by tales of people who overcome adversity and come back in ways that are against all the odds. The life of today's Blue Sky guest, Marko Cheseto, is truly a case in point. As you'll soon learn, when Marko was attending college in Alaska, his promising track and field career was suddenly and tragically derailed when he lost the very things he says led him to receive a scholarship in the first place, his feet. But it was at the depth of his despair when Marko decided to turn his attitude around and not let his disability debilitate or define him. I hope you'll be as inspired as I was by this Blue Sky conversation with Marko Cheseto. This Blue Sky episode includes references to extreme mental health disorders and suicide, and may be disturbing to some of our listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicidal thoughts, please call 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Marko Cheseto, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I am so glad to have you on. I am very inspired by your story. There are some, though, in the audience listening who don't know your story. So I'd like to go back. I know you were born in Kenya, and eventually you were a school teacher, I believe, before you developed an interest in running. Can you tell us about all that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kenya, went to school. So when I was in high school, I developed interest in running. So I ran in high school, and then that was 2000 to 2003. Then I went to a teacher training college in Kenya, 2004, 2006. And so I pursued my running on those two institutions. While I was running in college, I met a coach who was on a recruiting tour in Kenya from Texas Tech, and he introduced me to athletic scholarships in America. So then 2008, I ended up in Alaska. I didn't go to Texas because I think there was a little bit of misunderstanding. I didn't really understand what the coach wanted. So I graduated, went back home, and couldn't remember what the coach had said. But luckily, I had given him my address, PO box. We don't have physical addresses in Kenya. So he made a follow up with a newsletter asking if I was still interested in coming to the US on athletic scholarship, which I was. But at that time, I had overstayed my reply, so I replied to him. Of course, he wanted me to reply through an email, which I didn't even know what an email is. So I had to work around, ask a friend who knew what an email was, used his email, and the coach replied back asking if I was Jackson or Marko. And I was like, man, how did he even know that this was not my email?
Yeah, so wait, so you had Texas Tech was after you, but also you mentioned Alaska. So University of Alaska at Anchorage is where you wound up getting the scholarship.
Yes, because by the time I got back to Texas Tech College or university, the coach didn't have scholarship for me.
Ah,
So he referred me to a friend in Iona College, New York. But this friend had applied to be an assistant coach at University of Alaska Anchorage. So he forwarded my work to Alaska. So then I ended up in Alaska. So I didn't voluntarily go to Alaska myself. I was drafted.
you were drafted, and okay, so and to get there, you had scholarship, but you also had to physically get there. And from what I've read, your parents did everything they could to come up with the money you needed. I read that they sold cows, sheep, even your dad's store. Do I have that right to get you so you could
Yes,
physically get to Alaska?
because it's not cheap to
No,
come to America for an athletic student or a student athlete. You
right,
have to raise money, one, for SAT
sure.
or TOEFL, test of English as a second language. So I did all that. And then, of course, you have to make an appointment at the embassy, go to the embassy, and then do an interview.
Oh my gosh. So you go all the way from Kenya to Alaska, and you'd been told it was cold, but you had no idea what you were in for, did you?
No, I was, you know, everything you're told in life is relative. You
Yes.
think cold in relative to what? So my
Right.
reference point was the highlands of Kenya.
Right.
I went to school, college in the slopes of Mount Kenya,
Okay.
the very cold place. And I think at night it got to maybe like whatever 0 degrees or maybe one. But by the time we get up in the morning, it was already warm. And
Right.
we didn't really have like a lot of ways of you know measuring the temperatures.
Right.
So it was
Right.
whatever I could think of. But then, yeah, I did not envision what I encountered.
And it was interesting. So this coach in Alaska there was already a fellow Kenyan there who I think helped recruit you. He was sort of building his team with these scholarships from folks as far away as Kenya. And this is a Division I program, so you were a very good runner, and not only a good Division I runner, you were an All-American several times, 5,000, 10,000 meters. I believe you set the record for the Anchorage half marathon as well. So you were a serious runner.
Yes, I Alaska was division. It still is Division 2 in track and field and cross country. But given Alaska, we were a very, very competitive team. It was not just a team from Alaska.
Oh, I had it wrong. I thought it was D1. So you're Division II, but still, you're an All American. You set a record for the Anchorage half marathon. And then you helped recruit your cousin and very close friend, William, from Kenya.
Yes.
And he came to Anchorage. And I think a lot of Americans could understand being that far from home, being in such a different place, short days, when it gets dark in Alaska. And he developed a lot of severe depression and ultimately took his life. And this really impacted you. And can you just talk about how down you were and then what happened when you headed out into the night that time in November?
Yeah, his part. It's like there was no red flags. That was the strangest thing about that aspect of him taking his own life.
Yes.
He was just doing good in school, and then all of a sudden, this guy took his life. And of course, this is somebody that we grew up together. There's so many memories back home,
Yes.
from back home. So then it's just like, oh wow, this guy just came here and now boom, he's dead. And of course, so many people think I knew more than everybody else. Rightfully so, though, because
Right. Because you were so close.
yeah, I know. So they were like, yeah, you should know more, but I did. So it drove me into a major, major depression. And of course, culturally, from an African perspective, a Kenyan perspective, you know, sometimes you just push things.
Mm.
You don't just offer analyze I'm depressed and all this. So I kind of was trying to brush it off, hoping I'll get better. So let's
Yes.
see how this goes. But then things didn't go well for me. So November 2000, of course, I was, I checked myself in at a mental health clinic just to, make sure that I was doing okay.
Yes.
So I was on antidepressant. So in 2011, no, of course, when William took his life, it was February of 11.
Yes.
So November 2011, I took some antidepressants and then I went for a run. Of course, this has been a therapy thing for me, running, You go to
Yes.
class and then you're like, man, I need a break from studying. So let me go for a run.
Yes.
So I went for this run and then I passed out. But the passing out is not just like a passing out. The passing out was from the antidepressants, the overdose from antidepressants that I took.
And it was November in Alaska. And as I understand it, you weren't dressed to be out for a long time. You were dressed for a run. So light jeans, maybe a light jacket, sneakers. You pass out. And in November in Alaska, or even early November, you're getting into single digit temperatures at night and you've gone missing and your coach is worried, your friends are worried. They don't know where you are.
Yes. And so I just woke up and I was like, wow, I am in the middle of nowhere. And the moon was so bright. And my memory was so clear that I knew I was in a wrong place and I needed to get myself out of where I was. Luckily, I was able to, not knowing how long I had been out. So I tried to stand up, but couldn't really like walk. So I think I stumbled several times and finally I walked into a groomed ski trail, which helped because the snow there was packed. So then I walked and then not really knowing, I didn't have a plan on this walk.
No.
This was just getting myself out of where I was. And then I ended up in a hotel lobby. And this was where, and not knowing this is a hotel lobby, this is an after, I'm being told this is where you ended up.
Right.
So I went to this hotel lobby, and this guy, I remember him asking me where I had been for 3 days.
Yeah. 56 hours you were missing.
Yes.
In the cold in Alaska. Your coach was quoted as saying, it was to the point where I thought we weren't going to find him until the spring when the snow melted.
Yes.
Incredible. It's easy to imagine what an extreme transition a move from Kenya to Alaska would be for anyone. But Marko helps add to this with anecdotes about cultural challenges he experienced during the college process as well. For example, when a recruiting coach asked him to send an email, Marko didn't even know what that was. And it's helpful for us to realize what so many people are up against when trying to afford American universities. In Marko's case, even with a sports scholarship, his parents had to come up with so much money that they had to sell some of their most valuable possessions. But Marko was doing relatively well with his transition to life in Anchorage, until the time of his cousin's tragic death. Marko's shock and grief fueled a depression that became very serious very quickly. And when he disappeared on that November night, his coach and teammates understandably worried that Marko might become yet another campus fatality. His appearance in that hotel lobby seemed like a miracle. But now, Marko was in danger of hitting even lower psychological depths. So you're alive, but you're in very rough shape, and I've seen the footage and the photographs. In particular, you've got extreme frostbite, and to save you, one of the casualties would be your legs. So both of your legs were amputated from below the knee, and you're lying in a hospital. You've lost your friend. You've had this terrible ordeal, and you said something very poignant when you realized what had happened. You said, it was my feet that got me to America, and now I don't have my feet. So here you were in this severe depression, this awful thing happens, you're lying in bed, missing your feet, and somehow, and this is what I'd really like to dig into, people describe this incredible switch in you, in your psychology, and how you thought about your life. Can you describe what that all was like?
I think for me, realizing that I had lost everything that I thought I was fighting for. I don't have my feet. And at this point, I don't even know if my mind was going to come back.
Right. Sure.
I'm thinking, well, I was so depressed because my cousin died. And now there's this tragic part too that is so personal that I'm going to live with it for the rest of my life.
Incredible.
So, at that point, I'm not even sharing this with somebody. It's just a self talk, it's internal, it's very deep, very, very deep. That at some point, I could feel, the numbness of how am I really going to navigate life? And one of the things was thinking, what if I go back to Kenya this way? That means mom would have to take care of me
Right.
for the rest of my life.
Mm.
Because I have seen how people with amputations or disability in Africa, Kenya, the way they end up being, a family member, take care of them.
Sure.
And I get asked sometimes, did you want to kill yourself when you took so much antidepressant and went? I said, no. I never thought of maybe I want to, but I must admit, when I thought about my mom taking care of me for the rest of my, I wished something could take me away
Oh my
because
gosh.
I couldn't foresee myself just being taken care of by my mom. Because I came to America thinking I want to go to America, greener pasture, and change
Yes.
my family, financial, everything.
Right.
And here I am. I have acquired something that I never foresee it coming. But then at that point, I'm thinking, no, you're still in America. You're thinking way too far out. Let's deal with what we have now. You've lost everything. What if you try and build yourself? Just what the heck? What do you have to lose at this point? Just try and go so hard and try to build yourself to a point that you can't anymore.
How did that, was that like a light switch? It just came to
It
you? I
was
mean,
actually because I was sitting in a hospital bed and I'm questioning everything in life. Like, why am I here? What brought me here? All these things. Like, why? And I realized because I thought I could have saved my cousin's life, my friend's life who committed suicide.
yes.
But then I thought, if you really, really was so good in taking care of situations, would it have been your own self? Would you have prevented an amputation?
Ah,
Would you have prevented depression?
right.
And at that point, I realized, what? There are so many things in life that will happen that we will never even have control over. And some we have control over. And I remember one old lady who visited me at the hospital told me the tragedy of life is the longer you stay alive, the more losses you will see in your life.
Right.
Like, I'm not even going to sit here just trying to tell you that will be the last person you will see dying
Right.
very close to you. Like, more are coming. And she was not wrong.
Right.
In 2018, my brother, own brother, same mother, who had joined me in Alaska, transferred to Kansas, killed in a road accident.
Terrible.
2014, my father died from cancer. But at least that one was something we talked about it. And,
Yes.
he made it like, hey guys, if I don't make it, I am not going to worry so much because I have people like you. But then, so it was that moment that I realized really there could have been nothing that I was supposed to do because I didn't see it. It was not like something had told me your cousin was going to kill himself, and then I didn't do something.
Right.
So that really helped me. And then I thought, well, maybe I just need to grieve and not need to take antidepressants. And this is a part that I always tell people, this is not an advice. I am not a medical doctor. So do not take this as an advice. But I stopped taking the antidepressants myself in the hospital
Wow.
because I said, heck, this is the best place to experiment all this because you're in the right place,
If anything
right
happens,
there.
you're surrounded.
Yeah, they'll figure out a way of fixing this. So I stopped. And so I just told myself too. And this was so powerful. I said, every time I think of a negative thought, I'll have to bombard myself with a lot of positive talk, self talk, telling myself, if I believe on this negative stuff, right? What prevents me from believing in the positive side too, though?
Huh?
Like, why would I just believe on the negative thing that is a thought
Right.
and not a thought of good things,
Right.
positive, like
Right.
grit, building myself, resilience? So I say, well, I'm choosing this path of, hey, who cares? Even if people say that guy just went cuckoo and lost his feet, like, who really cares about that? I am the only one that I know where I am taking myself to. And it really, really helped me. And the other part was, I didn't want to hide what I went through
Mm.
because I didn't want to have anything that I'm hiding. I said, you know what? This is going to be a story to be told.
Yes.
I'm going to share my story so that somebody who could be going through what I went through could look at me and say, hey, if that guy made it out, I am sure I can make it out too. So I said, I am going to talk about my story. And it kind of became a therapy in some way.
Sure.
And like right now, talking about it's not easy,
Of course not.
but it's just something that I've talked about it so much that I know this is and
Incredible.
I know even at your lowest, there's always that tiny hope in any human circumstance that you can just cultivate it and nurture it and just hold to that dearly and just keep telling yourself, you know what? If I am believing a negative thought 100%, I can as well believe on a positive thought 100% of the time too.
Marco does a great job recounting the range of thoughts going through his head as he lay in that Alaskan hospital bed. He envisioned returning to Kenya, but he'd seen what life was like there for amputees and couldn't stand the thought of being a lifelong burden to his mother. He was also given some great advice about the fact that the longer our lives are, the more we'll be forced to deal with the deaths of people close to us, and that losses like the passing of his cousin are simply part of the human experience. And understanding that so much of life is out of our control, Marco focused on one thing he could control: his attitude. And today he says that every time he has a negative thought, he tries to bombard himself with positive ones. And it was there, in that hospital room, that the seeds of Marco's incredible turnaround were planted. Now it's like, cue the Rocky music, because now you're gonna make this comeback. So tell us about that. You get fitted for prosthetic limbs. I've seen footage of you doing your rehab, and you don't just come back to being able to walk and get around and move. You somewhere in this process decide, you know what, I'm gonna run again. Can you talk about that?
Yes, and when I was in the hospital thinking about how my mom might end up taking care of me for the rest of my life, a prosthetist came. I was fitted on walking prosthetics. And then I walked the first day of fitting.
Really?
And I realized, you know what? If I can walk, I think I can run. And I had an amazing support system. This renowned prosthetic and orthotic company, Awesome, it's OSSUR, came into my life through a CAF, the Challenged Athlete Foundation. I applied for a grant through them.
And were you recovering? Were you in Alaska recovering, or did?
Yes.
Okay, so you stayed in Alaska, but you connect with this organization who helped you with the prosthetics and the training.
Yes. And then I started running. And the one thing that I never thought of as a source of motivation really motivated me. I went, of course, after a few months of rehab, and I went to a track in a nearby middle school and ran several laps. And I started sweating. And it was that ability to sweat that gave me that sense of, yes, I have my life of running back. Because things that used to happen to me prior to amputation are happening.
Right.
So then but then there was the other aspect too of this quick turnaround too. At the hospital, when a doctor was making an assessment, asking me questions, how do you feel? What is going on? I remember one time telling him, everything feels good to me. I feel fine, except my hands are so painful, very painful.
Your hands.
And then he went, how about your feet? I said, no, my feet are fine. I don't feel any pain on them. And the doctor goes, no, I don't like that answer about your feet because pain is a sign of life. And every time I would feel like I am having a lot of painful memories, painful moments in my life, then I remembered what a doctor told me. Yes, this is a sign that you're still living, you're alive, and it's okay to feel this way. And, it's surprising how sometimes things like that don't resonate with us until you experience it. Somebody tells you, and I'm thinking, how many times did I even know, like, the word pain? But it never had any significance in my life until when my life was hanging on a balance.
Yeah. So two pieces of great advice. The woman who told you that as long as you live, you'll have more and more losses. And then this physician saying that pain is a sign of life.
Yes. So every time I was running, something was not comfortable. Then I realized, you know what? You're feeling that because you're living. So I kept pushing myself, of course, with self talk. Because guess what, though? Yes, therapy is there, great physicians, great therapists. But 100% of the time, who do we hang around? Our own self. So that 100% of the time is the greatest determinant of who we become or how we can overcome a tragic moment in life. Because what do you tell yourself? What you tell yourself is going to determine how you act, how you can treat yourself. Because I was, I like to think I was not very kind to myself, and I never had a reason to. Because I was young guy in school going through all these amazing things in life. But then it came a point where I realized I also have to sit back and remember that I have to be kind to myself. I don't have to be hard on myself all the time.
Amazing.
And then I realized too, sometimes we are in rush, run, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. I sat back and I had this amazing philosophy. I was looking at a video, and you know how sometimes you can put a video on slow motion and then you see everything, every move. I said, you know what? This is how I'm going to open. I'm going to go on slow motion all the time. So I could see everything. And, in literal sense, there's no way you can just have to like go. But it, it's a thought that I wanted to help myself with so that I'm not always like, trying to be ahead of things. I just wanted sometimes to be behind it and seeing it from behind things.
Wow. So let's talk a little bit more about the running. So you didn't just go out and break a sweat on the track and say, I'll run a mile here or a mile there. You decided you're going to get back, you're going to be competitive, and you're going to be fast, and you're going to run long distance. So I have a few statistics here. You in 2018, so just 7 years after, almost exactly, you ran a sub 3 hour New York marathon. In 2019, the following, I guess that would have been months later in April in Boston, you run a 2:42:24, and you've also run a 2:35. So you, I think, still have the world record for double amputee, 2:35 marathon.
Yes.
Tell us about the training to get back to that kind of level and speed.
It's discipline. You have to be very disciplined to be able to do that. Of course, para athletes do not have a lot of sponsors out there as able-bodied.
Right.
So I have to have a 8 hours job
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
In that, I have to fix in a training plan where I have to run around 60 to 100 miles a week.
Yes.
So it's a lot of training
Sure.
that goes into that. But I did that because, I was a long distance runner given.
Yes.
But then at the same time, because of what I wanted this second chance in life to be, because for me, people would say, yeah, you had the talent, which I am not disputing it. But then at the same time, I want kid out there
Yes.
to know that regardless of what you're going through, or even adults too, but my main motivation is young kids who need to have somebody out there to look for. Like, I really want to do something. I am an amputee. What can I do? So I told myself, as long as I'm able to push myself, I want to push myself so hard. Though that there's a reference point out there that somebody will be like, I want to run faster than that guy. I want to beat those times so bad. But then also, it's also a theme that our ability to do great things is not determined by our physical appearance. There is this inner power. There is this innermost strength, potential that we have, that we sometimes don't fully exploit it because we set limitations to ourselves that don't even exist. Yes, I know limitations are out there, but the amount of limitations that we put upon our potential really, really is so detrimental in what we could achieve.
There's a reason for the expression we have about pinching ourselves. If we don't feel it, we're either dreaming or we're not alive. That was great advice Marko got when he was told that pain is a sign of life, and it's a helpful reminder for us all. It's also really interesting to hear Marko talk about not getting ahead of himself, but living life from behind and in slow motion. And whether ahead or behind, in real time or slow-mo, Marko is achieving his goal to motivate others who are experiencing setbacks, hardships, and pain. For our final segment, I wanted Marko to talk about serving as a role model for others. You go out of your way, I know, to serve as a role model, like you said. Can you talk about how that manifests itself, what sort of programs you're involved with? I also want to talk to you about the school you set up back in Africa, but in general, just how you live your life. And by the way, you're not in Alaska anymore. You're in Florida, enough of the cold weather.
Yes, I'm in Florida, and we have to put it out there how I got to Florida.
Please.
I was coming to Florida for my prosthetic fitting in a company that I'm working in now. And I realized because of frostbite, my body really responded so well to warmth. After being in Alaska for 10 years, we decided not only to move to Florida, but drive
Really?
from Alaska, from Anchorage, Alaska to Orlando, Florida. It took us like 2 weeks. We were not in a hurry, but three kids who were under 10.
So wait, we have to go back. So did you get married in Alaska and have your children up there?
Yes, I got married in Alaska. And so we had our kids in Alaska, but we decided no, we have to move further south. So we moved to Florida.
Yes. And year-round training is a little bit easier in Florida as well.
Yes. So you're asking me what I involve myself with. One, I coach my kids, sports, basketball, soccer. Those are the two that I do.
Yes.
But then when I'm out there, coaching these kids, running around with them, they see me do. It's a motivation. They come to me and they ask me. This is the thing I like about kids. They ask unfiltered questions that are so critical.
Yes.
Like their parents, I could see parents clenching their teeth, going, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe my son asked that on my dog." I think, why not? Like this kid is asking, "Oh, mom, look at that guy. He doesn't have legs and he's running." Like,
Yeah.
that's true. That he
That's a
didn't make that
fact.
up. But then I have to sit and explain to them, "Yeah, this is my running feet. I run on them, I walk on them, I do all this." But then also through my running, I go through so many, running a marathon. You can imagine, like running New York Marathon, you go through the five boroughs of New York. How many people see me do that?
Amazing.
New York, Boston, Chicago, local
Big
residents.
crowds. Big crowds. Yeah.
So, and then also I do speaking engagements. So I go out and speak to groups, running club, schools, any group, you know. My message resonates with any group, young, older, women, men, workforce, student athletes, because it's about this human potential, basically.
Yes.
And the ability to motivate yourself even when you are at your lowest.
Amazing. And let's talk about it. I don't know if I'll pronounce it right. Alaskana School.
Yes.
Could you tell us about that? And does the name have something to do with Alaska, or is that just a coincidence?
It's not a coincidence. It has something to do with Alaska. So in 2011, after my accident, I thought of what I could do for humanity.
Hmm.
And I thought about my village back in Kenya where kids do not have, there is an education system there, but it's not offering variety of access to like the outside world,
Okay.
to say.
Yeah.
And I remember kids even in sixth grade in a public school could not read.
Hmm.
And then these kids have to do a national exam in eighth grade that would, it's a placement exam that puts them in either a good high school or a village level high school where kids, the likelihood of them going to a university or a college was very low.
Yes.
So I said, like I said, slow motion. We're not going to change overnight. So 2012, I started a school, grades, it was pre-K through second grade.
Okay.
And we built onto it every year. But this school is served the community in amazing ways. We've had kids go to very good high schools in Kenya, and we've employed 12 local teachers and two subordinate staff, a chef, two chefs actually. So, and then now, what we are doing in that school, starting January of 2025, we are now in process through partnership with this a Kenyan Kid Foundation. The owner started a school in Kenya too, and kids in Kenya have to pay for school fees to go to a high school.
Ah.
So this friend of mine, he's a Kenyan but lives in Canada, started a high school that takes kids with good running talent. So a few months ago, we were just talking, and he was like, "Man, I'm looking for a partner to help nurture kids with running talent so that they can come to my high school, and then I can see how I can sponsor them through high school. But I
Wow.
wanted a school that can nurture them while they are younger, the elementary school. And I said, I have, you're talking to the right person. And because we are friends, he was laughing. He didn't realize that I already have a school.
He
He
didn't
was like,
know.
oh, no, this is a serious matter. I was like, this is serious. We have Alaskana. You need to check on my website. And Alaskana was two coined words. I started it while I was in Alaska, and the school is in Kenya.
Ah,
So we thought, what can we call the school?
I like
So
it.
it became Alaska and Kenya, and of course, became Alaskana.
I love it. I love it. Incredible. So, what are you training for? We're having this interview in February. Are you running Boston in April? What's next for you?
Yes, I am running Boston in April, and then potentially Chicago in the fall.
Are your times getting faster? Have you peaked at 2:35? What's next?
No, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. Maybe something amazing is going to happen in the fall. So that is
Okay.
the hope.
Okay, you heard it here first on the Blue Sky podcast. Something big's happening with Marko. You're training well, it sounds like.
Yes, I am training well, and we are also, training well, and also uh, raising funds to build a dormitory for this school in Kenya, because we've realized that for us to fully support these kids, we need them to have a place where we have a coach, nutrition, and then of course studying, because of course education is the important aspect of it. But then these kids can also make a living through their talent of running. So we want to set them up in a good way that they understand education is important, running is important, but above all, you have to be self motivated and be disciplined in what you do.
Amazing. And so you drove down from Alaska with a wife and three kids.
Yes,
Three kids now. How old are they now?
we have 12, 8, and a 7.
Wow. And you had to reschedule because your daughter was getting an award at school. So it sounds like they are thriving. You are instilling in them the kinds of lessons that you're trying to spread across the world.
Yes, I am. But sometimes it can be challenging to inspire your own kids, because they are like, Dad, you are our dad. One time, I was just we were dining table, we were just eating, and I told them, hey, are you guys going to be runners like your dad? And then I remember one of them going, Dad, no, I don't think I want to be a runner myself, because I don't have running feet like you.
They want the blades.
Yes, so I was like, well, these biological ones are better than my running blades. But still, yes, we always aspire and tell them the good things. The thing I realized too, though, is good things don't expire. We cannot be tired of telling people about good things, even our kids, even when they are not listening. It's not like you tell them good things, you guide them to do great, that is going to expire. It will never. They will remember one time in their adult life and goes, well, my dad told me this one time. I don't remember what year, because it will not expire.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and you talked about a couple of those conversations that help influence and change your life. So as we wrap up, Marko, this has been incredibly inspiring, and I'm sure there are people listening who either themselves are going through a tough time or have a loved one who is at their lowest. And you've been there, and you've mentioned a few of these things as we went. But if there's something you had to say to someone who is really struggling and feeling like they can't get out of it, what kind of advice would you impart given your incredible life experience?
I will just tell them there is no situation that is permanent. It's not going to be like that forever. In 2011, I could even like walk. But in 2024, so many people are like, I cannot believe I'm running a marathon behind a guy missing 2 feet. So no, it's going time. Time is medicine. Just give any situation time. But also though, being active about trying to change that situation, because can't just sit and expect that things will change. You have to be active about changing that situation.
Incredible. Marko Cheseto, I am so thankful for your time and for your example and for all that you do. And I'm going to be watching out for you in Boston and Chicago as you continue to shorten your marathon times to even more incredible records. Thank you for being on the show and for all that you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Bill.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Those are charming reflections Marko shares about kids and their lack of inhibition when noticing his prosthetics. And it's pretty funny that his own kids said they can't be runners because they don't have those cool blades that their dad does. Those blades have carried Marko quite a metaphorical distance from that Anchorage hospital bed to where he is today. And Marko's comeback story supports his suggestion that when facing adversity, we should always remember that time is medicine. And speaking of time, let's hope Marko might break his own marathon record soon. But whether he does or does not, Marko Cheseto will surely continue to fulfill his goal of using the overcoming of his own challenges to inspire others as they take on theirs. I hope you enjoyed this Blue Sky conversation with Marko Cheseto. Let us know what you thought by leaving us a review or rating. And if you like this sort of content, follow the Optimism Institute online and go to our website to sign up for the Blue Sky Weekend monthly newsletter. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.